All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And good evening, one and all, and welcome back to the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and for the next 2 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we will cross these time-space continuums that I call our traveling highway to the X Zone. The X Zone is a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and in the province of Ontario, the northern tiers of the state of New York and Pennsylvania, on your hometown radio, Classic 1220 AM, that's CFAJ, right here in St. Catharines, down the street from us. And they stream us as well on Classic 1220. .ca. As you know, this is the X Zone, where we explore the stories and journeys of remarkable individuals making a difference in our world. Well, this evening we have a truly inspirational guest with us, Lynn Monet. As a death doula, nurse, and author, Lynn combines her medical expertise with deep compassion to guide individuals and families through one of life's most profound transitions. From navigating the emotional landscape of dying to offering support at the end of life, Lynn's work is invaluable. She's here to share with us her insights, experience, and wisdom. And you can learn more about her work at www.lynnmonet.com. That's LYNNMONET.com. And Lynn, welcome back to the X Zone.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Rob. Thank you so much for having me.
Lynn, let me ask you, what was it that made you decide to do the great work that you're doing? And I don't think there are a lot of people who really understand and appreciate the very, very compassionate role that you play at a time when most people enter into a very deep, dark pit of grief.
I've been a nurse for 40 years. 17 of that has been in end-of-life care. But I also have a gift of second sight that I've had ever since I was a little girl. And with that combined, I did geriatrics and end-of-life care, and I would see things during that time that people would be in that active state of transitioning between leaving the earth and moving upward to heaven, or whatever you want to call it there. I call it heaven. So, and that there were some very beautiful things that occurred that I would see over and over again, or that I got to be a part of and overheard, like babies that haven't been born yet, and different things that people would talk about seeing, like loved ones coming in to collect them. So I wanted to write a book that would help take the stigma of death and dying away. And have people look at it in a different way. I mean, there's such a finality to death, and really, we don't die. We just simply shed our bodies and we go on.
My wife, as you may remember, was also a nurse, and she was a practicing nurse for a number of years. She retired about 5 years ago. And she agrees with everything that you've said when it comes to the end. She worked in the palliative section of a hospital in Hamilton. And I would hear her and her other nurses talking about different patients. And for the first little while, Lynn, I couldn't understand how they would talk about it in a positive way. And I'm saying, well, wait a minute, hold on here. Death, that's it. You know, the person is gone. They shed the meat suit, the consciousness or the soul goes, and away you go. And they would look at me and just smile and say, you just don't get it. And I said, please explain it to me then. And what they would say is that they too, at the time of passing with patients, the patient would see his or her loved ones, his or her pets that have gone beyond. They would be freed of the earthly chains, and they knew at that time that they were going on another journey, that being born on this side in our suit and finally getting out of the suit and going to the next part of the life trip. I don't know if we can call it a life trip, but you know, it's just a continuation of why we are here. And the Irish have a great way of looking at the passing. They look at the person's life, and they don't mourn it. They celebrate the life. Vikings used to do the same. Why is it then that there are so many people who still look at death as final, that they get, grief? I can understand. And I was wondering, is it because they themselves, those on this side that are left behind, are really suffering their own loss and not the passing of the person into a celebratory area of a new and exciting chapter in their existence or in their soul's journey? How do you take it?
Yeah, I believe that death should also be celebrated. And people, the thing that, since there is such a finality to death, people don't realize that this is not the last time you're going to see your loved ones. As you had mentioned, your wife, and I totally concur with her on all of that. I mean, you see your pets again, you see your family again. And so it's not the last time. And I think that people see it as just such a finality, and then like you said, also it's kind of a loss for them.
Yes.
If they could see what I have seen and what I have heard, about people, they would be so happy for them. I mean, they're healthy, they're around us more than they can even be in life, because they're not having to work and pay taxes, and they're still around us. You can feel that essence of them around you.
Yeah.
And if people could look at it in that way, and I also think that traditional religion has had a lot to do with that and the way that we've been taught things. I mean, how many times have you heard a child say, oh, well, there's something in my room or my closet?
Exactly.
And the first thing that people say is that there's nothing there. So even in the medical field, and I find this interesting, is that a lot of times when people are in that transitioning state, when they start talking to loved ones that are deceased, the people that are in physical form get freaked out about it because they're not comfortable being in the room with a dead person, even if it's a person that they know, that they knew in life, like Uncle Bob. So they come running down to the nurse's station to me to get the meds to take down to silence the patient, because they're not comfortable with what they're talking about. So it's their discomfort.
I also learned that many times when the person who has, turned that corner and their time is near, they're actually held back by those members of their family who just don't want to release them and let them go.
I've seen that as well, or they linger, to touch base with somebody that hasn't quite shown up, so that they can have that final thing. And it is okay to grieve. However, extended grieving does kind of anchor part of them here, if that makes sense. They're multifaceted on the other side. They're doing many things, and they do everything by thought. So they just think of something and they can just go, from what I understand. But yes, that's true. If people, it is okay to grieve and feel it, but they really want you to live your life here. They don't want you to stay in that state of suffering. They want you to drop into your heart and stay in that space of love and compassion and understanding that, again, this is not the last time that you're going to see your loved ones. You will see them again.
Lynn, how has your experience as a nurse influenced your work as a death doula?
Oh, wow. Because I've seen so many wonderful things, and because I'm very comfortable with talking about death and the act of dying and with people, that to engage with them on another level and give them comfort and having them look at it in a different way, and also to help them navigate, when somebody's passing, it's very easy to get taken advantage of. So I even help them with like the end of life planning and their end of life directives and that sort of thing, so that they have everything in place. I've actually had patients that I've gone to that have been diagnosed with terminal illness, and when I've walked in, they're laying in a fetal position in their bed with their beanie on, literally waiting for death. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Oh my gosh.
These days are precious. This is not a time to wait for death. This is a time to get your things in order for your loved ones that are going to be staying here. If the roof needs to be fixed, it's time to get it repaired. If it's going to make it easier for the loved ones that you're leaving behind. And then I've come to the house the following week to check on them. They actually greet me at the door. They're all shaved and have nice
wonderful
clothes on. So it helps to have them look at it in a different way. That light bulb kind of goes on for them when they realize that it's not. And also sharing with them the stories of the loved ones coming in, and then they share back and they're like, I saw my parents, and I know my parents have been passed away for years, but I saw them just the other day, and it made me feel happy. Then it makes them realize that there is life after death, and that it's not something that you're just gone type thing. So it brings them comfort that way.
Lynn, I've got about a minute before I have to go to our first break, and I was wondering if you could explain what a death doula is and what services that you provide for those who may have been hearing the term death doula for the very first time listening to us tonight.
Yes, it's basically a death midwife is another word for it. As a midwife brings in babies, a death doula helps people go out. And the services are also end-of-life directive planning, can help you with the difference between healthcare power of attorney and power of attorney, and give you a lot of tips like how to do that for free. How you do it yourself so you don't have to pay an attorney, and that sort of thing, and kind of getting the family on the same page and bringing them all in together to help make decisions and even patch up relationships and that sort of thing. And so we do a lot of things. We're a huge support system, not only for the patient, but for the family too. So
basically, you are an end-time guardian angel.
Oh, I appreciate that. I just love my work. I love connecting with people, and and I'm still connected to a lot of them even years after their loved ones have passed away, just because we built that rapport type thing, and they check in with me every once in a while and kind of update me on what's going on in their life. So I love that.
Exonation, Lynn Monet is our special guest. Her website is lynnmonet.com, and Lynn and I will be back on the other side of this very short break as the X-Zone continues with yours truly, Rob McConnell, and my special guest, Lynn Monet. On the other side of this break, you're listening to us on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, CFAJ in St. Catharines, and they stream us on classic1220.ca. So whatever you do, don't go away.
Said I was in my early 40s with a lot of life before me, when a moment came that stopped me on a dime. I spent most of the next days looking at the x-rays, talking about the options and talking about sweet time. I asked him when it sank in that this might really be the real end. How's it hit you when you get that kind of news. Man, what'd you do? And he said, I went skydiving, I went Rocky Mountain climbing, I went 2.7 seconds on a bull named Blue Manchu, and I loved deeper, and I spoke sweeter, and I gave forgiveness I've been denying. And he said, someday I hope you get the chance to live like you were dying.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone, and we're coming to you on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and throughout the province of Ontario and the northern tiers of New York and Pennsylvania on your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ AM, and they stream on classic1220.ca. Lynn Monet is our guest. Her website is lynnmonet.com, and that's LYNNMONET.com. And we're talking about death. We're talking about what it's like to be a death doula, and Lynn has also written a book that we're going to be talking about. And again, Lynn, thank you very much for not only coming here and talking to the audience, but for those many hearts that you've touched over the years and who may not have had the opportunity of saying thank you. I would like to thank you for them.
Oh, thank you so much for that. It warms my heart. Thank you so much. You know, as you were mentioning before about grief, a lot of times people miss a very, very important time when that person is in that state of transition. And I'm sure that your wife will back me up on this. When they start into that state of transition, the patient, their filters start to efface. So they have the ability to hear the telepathy from the other side, which is how our deceased loved ones communicate on the other side as they start coming in. And they also have the ability to hear the people speaking in human form. And a lot of times people miss an opportunity to actually speak to loved ones that have crossed over through the person that's passing in that moment because of their grief and their fear of even having a deceased person in a room. And I have a story that I would love to share with you, if that's okay.
It is totally fine. Thank you for sharing this with us.
Okay, I had a patient that was totally blind, and I mentioned this one because a lot of times the medical field will say that it's hallucinations that they're having, or that it's a death thing that happens, and I don't believe that because I've seen the angels and loved ones come in for people. So I had this client named Edna that had been totally blind for 10 years, and she had been on my unit for about 2 weeks, and her son and daughter come to the nurse's station, and they say to me, Mom's talking to people in the room that aren't there. Well, I kind of expected that, but to comfort them more so than her, because I knew she was fine, I offered to walk down to the room with them to check on their mama and see if she needed anything. And when we stepped into the room, Edna was sitting at a slant, and she was reaching up into the sky as if she was being handed something very, very delicate, and she was smiling. So she was very happy with what she was receiving. And I said to her, I said, Edna, who's here? And she immediately said, George. And her daughter turned as white as a sheet, and she had to sit down. And she said, George is my father, and he passed away X amount of years ago. And then Edna, my client, spoke up and said, and he's glad that you're taking good care of Pixie. Pixie was Edna's poodle. When George passed away, the son had to take possession of Pixie that was still alive, like 15 years old, but still alive. And he told me the story about it. And he said, do you think my mom's hallucinating? And of course, in a professional setting, I can't come forward and say, no, I think your dad is here. So I turned it around and I said to him, I said, do you think she's hallucinating? And he said, well, I don't know. And I said, well, do you mind if I try something? I said, I'm not trying to change your religious beliefs or anything, but it's been my experience. The loved ones do come in to collect their family members and help them transition over. And he said, okay. And I asked Edna, I said, Edna, can I ask George a question? And she nodded her head yes. And I said, what color is your son's shirt? And Edna said, yellow. Now keep in mind, and he was wearing a yellow Ralph Lauren polo shirt. Now, keep in mind that Edna was blind. She was blind. She couldn't see shadows or anything. So George had to tell her what color the shirt was. And in that moment, her son got it, and he said, hi, Dad. And he realized that his father was really there with his mother helping her to transition over. And so I left them and I said, well, if you need anything, call me and spend time with your mom and your dad.
What a wonderful story. What a
Yeah.
wonderful
And I mean,
story.
how can a blind person hallucinate? You know, the medical field
Yeah.
says it's hallucinations. It's impossible for a blind person to hallucinate.
Why is it that talking about you believing somebody who could not be seen in the room was thought of being unprofessional?
Well, you know, because I was working in a medical setting, and medical setting is always about give them a pill. You know what I mean? If they're hallucinating, give them a pill. If they hear voices talking to them, give them a pill. And so you just can't come out and engage with them and validate what they're seeing. Although I had a couple of patients that I did because they were totally sane and seeing things, and I was seeing the things at the same time. And I have another story about that we might want to tell on the next part to kind of bring that home as well. But everything is about, you know, even people with mental illness, it's the same thing, give them a pill. So you're giving the people with mental illness lithium, you're giving the people that are passing, talking to loved ones that nobody else can see but them, they're giving them Seroquel and Buspar, trying to lower their frequency, for lack of a better word. And it lowers their energetic frequency because we are electric and water. So and then we're inside of these meat suits. So, and everything is energy. So you know, I can't come out and say, no, you're really seeing something, and have a patient say to the doctor as he's prescribing her something that will help them not see things, and say, well, the nurse said that she can see it too.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I truly do. However, being the devil's advocate over here in support of these patients who, God bless them, who knows what they've gone through in their lives, and here they are at that final transitioning stage, that should we not give them more credit or acknowledge more of what they're seeing and what they're saying at this point of their life?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that because I can see them too. And to validate them. And it's not something that's negative. It's something that is so beautiful. When you get to be in the room during that time, the person's transitioning, even if you're onlooking or you're in there doing something, the energy in the room shifts.
Yes.
And you can feel this joyful love feeling that there aren't human words to express, because it's otherworldly in a good way. It's coming from the other side, and it's invigorating, and you can see movement in the room sometimes as well. So it just, I don't know why the medical field doesn't go along with that too, but I'm hoping that with people like your wife and like me and other people too, that we can start getting that shifted into a better direction. Because you know what? I had to get to the point that I am also retired as a nurse. I just retired this past year. So I don't care if they take my license or not. So I'm going to talk about whatever I want, and I'm going to tell the truth. You know what I'm saying? So now I can talk about those things, and the repercussions are not going to come back on me.
Lynn, I understand what you're saying, and I fully support what you've said and what you've done, and thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you so much.
I believe that the reason, and this is just my opinion, Lynn, that the medical community does not want professionals like yourself and my wife and other members of the medical community to acknowledge what the patient is seeing or the patient is hearing, because they can't explain it. It's nothing that can be replicated in a laboratory.
That's true. And, you know, as from the science perspective, you know, energy cannot be created or destroyed.
Right.
And we are all energy. And when we leave our meat suits, that energy still exists. It just changes form. And they address the physical of what they can see, the mental of what they can hear and touch and feel. But when it comes to that energetic field that is beyond the body and within the body, they don't know how to address that because they can't touch it, taste it, or feel it. Yeah, you know what I'm saying.
I certainly do, and I had one member of the medical community try and slap my wrist for what I was saying and about my beliefs about what you and I are talking about, and he was very staunch and he was very arrogant. And, what would I know? I'm not a member of the medical community. I didn't go to university for 8 years. I don't hold an MD or a PhD. And, after he calmed down, I said, well, can you answer me one thing then, doctor? Do you go to church? Do you pray? And he said, of course I do. I said, then what evidence do you have of there is somebody actually listening to you when you pray? Or that any of these miraculous events that happened in the Bible really did happen? You can't see it, you can't explain it, and yet you believe it. And then there's a person who is getting ready to pass on from one part of his life to another part, and because you can't see it, you can't hear it, to you it doesn't exist. Why the double standard?
Yep, exactly. And I have so many events that have occurred that can validate the fact that loved ones do come in. I have a lady that I call her Abigail in my book.
Why don't we do this? I've got about 50 seconds before I go to the break, and I didn't want to disturb you because these are testimonials from a professional. You. This is first-hand evidence. This isn't hearsay. This isn't a story. This is a fact. And when we come back from this very short break, Lynn Monet will be sharing another story with us. We're also going to be talking to Lynn about her book and much more. Are you a skeptic or a believer? Send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. And on all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And to all the people on X.com who are a little upset with me because of my views and because I don't cater to their beliefs when it comes to politics, when it comes to science, when it comes to medicine, when it comes to the news, the fake news, I'm not going to apologize. Because I believe if it's good enough to think, it's good enough to say, as long as you could substantiate what you're saying. And that's all I'm trying to do. As a police officer, I learned one important lesson. There are 3 sides to every story. His side, her side, and the truth. And what I try to do here in the X-Zone, Monday through Friday, is bring both sides of a story to you, our listeners, the members of the worldwide X-Zone Nation, so that you can form your own opinions and beliefs. I'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X-Zone. So whatever you do, don't go away. I'll be right back.
Paperback writer. Yes, sir, oh, madam, will you read my book? It took me years to write. Will you take a look? It's based on a novel by a man named Lear, and I need a job, so I want to be a paperback writer. Paperback writer. It's a dirty story of a dirty man, and his clinging wife doesn't understand. His son is working for the Daily Mail. It's a steady job, but he wants to be a paperback writer. Paperback writer. Paperback writer.
And welcome back. Lynn Monet is our guest, www.lynnmonet.com. And we're talking about death, we're talking about dying, we're talking about the transition from this reality to the other side, and how it has been witnessed by members of the medical community, by family members, by friends at the time of passing or that close time to passing. There is a certain look that happens to the patient if they're conscious. They get there's an electricity in the air. There is a feeling that a heavy weight is being lifted. The patient and sometimes the people who are in the room as the patient is getting ready to pass, They see friends. They see members of the family, pets. In my opinion, based on the hundreds of people that I've had the pleasure of talking to here on the show over the 35 years I've been doing it, people like Lynn Monet, I believe that there is more to life than we will ever understand at this point. I was at a school one time, and the teacher asked me if I could explain to the 9th graders how I see what happens at a time of death. I said, Mother Nature has been trying to tell us about every part of our lives, but for some reason we don't want to take a look at nature because it may be so simple. So let me give you this example. As a little caterpillar that starts off as a larvae, progresses through his life or her life, they get bigger and they do what caterpillars do. And then there's a time when this part of the caterpillar's life is coming to an end. That caterpillar spins a cocoon. I look at the caterpillar as that point the caterpillar is, if you'll excuse the expression, has died. But something very fascinating and marvelous happens within the cocoon. What went into the cocoon was a live caterpillar that died and was transformed into a beautiful butterfly. That's what the way that I look at death. As we get closer to the time of our death, before we shed the meat suit that carries our very essence, our soul, we too change like that butterfly did, that caterpillar. And when we emerge on the other side from where we are going to start the next chapter of our existence, this is where we are now changed from this person who died on this side, has transformed and brought across to the other side by friends and loved ones. And Lynn, does that make sense to you?
Oh, that is a beautiful analogy. And the thing is this life is just a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
Life really doesn't start until you die and you cross over. It's more of a rebirth than a death. So, I totally agree with that. And, there are so many things as a nurse that I've been able to be part of that I'm so grateful for. I'm seeing people with Alzheimer's having those lucid moments right before death, hearing loved ones talk about babies that aren't being born, and also, people talking about their loved ones coming in and actually having some humorous examples as well of things. But all of them have had this consistency of seeing loved ones and angels coming in to collect them. And some of them that have been close to death have even seen other people's angels and loved ones come in and have commented on that. And I had a lady with Alzheimer's that had not spoken for 3 years. She had, I had remembered her, and if you'd like me to share the story, I would love to. I
would, please.
I would like to say first that a person with Alzheimer's, their soul is intact. So this mental thing that happens with them is their soul is still perfect. So anyway, I was at the nurse's station. I had this lady named Shirley that was kind of strolling along in her wheelchair, and she parked in front of the nurse's station looking down the hallway. And I remember her years before, because I had worked at this facility for almost 10 years, but I remembered her when she would come down as a volunteer and pass out the mail and pass out magazines to people. And she was very pleasant, but she had been on the unit for several years and she had not spoken one word in 3 years. So she's sitting there in front of the nurse's station, and I walked to the back to get my things in order to start my med pass. And all of a sudden I overhear somebody yelling out, "Take me home, please, please take me home." And I immediately come out of the nurse's station looking to see who it is that's yelling in the hallway. And I'm looking down each hallway and I didn't see anybody. And there's Shirley sitting there in front of the nurse's station, just sitting there. So I assumed that either a CNA or another nurse had stepped in and addressed the issue with the person that was hollering out. So I turned around and I went back into the nurse's station. And just as I hit that doorway going back into my area, I hear again, take me home, please, please take me home. And I turned around and it was Shirley. Shirley was sitting in her wheelchair, and I walked over to her and I said, Miss Shirley, I said, who are you talking to? I mean, I was surprised to hear her voice. I hadn't heard it in 3 years. And I'm like, who are you talking to? And she's pointing down the hallway where we had a client that was actively passing. She was in the room that was the first door on the right as you went down the hallway, just past the nurse's station. And Shirley is pointing down the hallway and she says to me, look at the angels, aren't they beautiful? And I looked, and of course I didn't see anything, but then I looked again and I could see them bulging out of the wall into the hallway of this woman's loved ones and angels that had come to collect them. And Shirley could see them too. And she continued to call out to them, take me home, please, please take me home.
God
So
bless her.
even in her situation, she could see them, and it hit a part of her soul and her memory that, she didn't forget, and she knew what they were. So, and it touched my heart so much. And she was right. And that lady passed away about an hour later, and Shirley herself passed about 3 months later. And a lot of times they'll start talking about seeing loved ones even as much as a year in advance before they pass away. I mean, I've had people talking about their parents and so many other things. And I would love to share more stories with you if you like.
Sure. Go. I'd like to share something with you first. My dad, God bless him, he's 96 years of age. And my mom passed away during COVID. So Dad went home for a while, but he just couldn't handle the home by himself. And he's a very stubborn Irishman. And God bless him, my brother did his very best. My dad lives in Montreal, and my wife and I get down there as often as we can. And it came to the point where Dad kept on falling. He wouldn't use the walker, and he had to go into a home. And the other day I called him up, and, I must say, since he's been in the home, he's made new friends, and his mental attitude, as well as his joie de vivre, his love for life has come back. And I said, so what's new, Dad? I said, he said, nothing. I had a good breakfast, and we were talking, and he said, yeah, I was walking by the window, and I started talking to your mother. And I said, okay, Dad, what do you and Mom talk about? He says, well, we talk about what I could have done better in my younger years, and your mother was telling me about the things that she could have done in her younger years. And I said, well, Dad, how often do you talk to Mom? And he says, well, she comes around 10 o'clock every night. And he said, you believe me? I said, yeah, I do, Dad. He said, well, thank you for believing me. Thank you. And the next time I see your mother, I'll tell her that you're doing fine. And I said, Dad, I know for a fact she knows because she visits me as well. And I believe that if people opened their heart and they weren't so skeptical, that they would be able to see, hear, and understand much more. And like you and I both know, that life is never ending.
That is so true. That is back into something that parallels also what your father was mentioning. I had, and if you'd like, I'll share this story with you too.
Please do.
Okay. I had a lady named Abigail. She had come to the facility that had 3 levels of care, and I was in the skilled unit, which was the last level of care, because of her husband's health. And they had no children. They were both only children, so all their relatives were passed, and so they only had each other. And she fell and fractured her hip. And when she was on the unit, I got to build up a rapport with her, and I went into her room one day, and she was upset, and she said, Lynn, she said, do you think I'm crazy? And I was teasing her because we had that rapport, and I said to her, I said, define crazy. And I'm kind of smiling at her.
Sure.
She says, no, I mean crazy. And I said, well, no, of course not. Why would you say that? And she said, well, I see my parents. She said, and I know that they passed away X amount of years ago, but it makes me happy and it comforts me when when they stop in to visit. She said, and now they're going to start me on a medication because they're saying that they're hallucinations, and I don't want the medication to take away my ability to see my parents. So fortunately, she was going to be discharged that morning. I had heard that report, and I told her, I said, first of all, I said, you're going to be discharged home to your apartment tomorrow morning. And as your advocate, you are of sound mind. You have the right to refuse. I said, I'm not going to push the meds on you if you don't want to take them. And I said, and you have that right. So, and she was happy with that. So the next day she goes home, and lo and behold, about 6 months later, she comes back on the unit. And now her health, she's got some terminal illness, and she's quickly declining from it. And she starts talking about, in addition to her parents, she's seeing this young woman with this little girl that comes to visit her in her room. And it was so real to her that she was actually sneaking cookies and cakes from the dining room back to her room in order to give to them when they would visit. And of course, this was creating a bug problem. So we had to stop her from doing that. But there was one day in particular, I was working midnights, and I volunteered to work a day shift for a friend of mine that needed the day off.
Lynn, I hate to do this, but I have to take my final break. We're going to have a bit of a cliffhanger here, and Exonation, Lynn Monet is my special guest. A very special segment on tonight's show. And if you'd like to find out more about Lynn, please visit her website, lynnmonet.com. And we'll be back on the other side of this break as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, and my special guest, Lynn Monet. And you're listening to us on the Talkstar Radio Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and on your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ, streaming us at classic1220.ca.
I need a job, so I want to be a paperback writer. Paperback writer. It's a dirty story of a dirty man and his clinging wife doesn't understand.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
And welcome back, everyone. This is a wonderful world, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us tonight here on the X Zone. My guest this hour is Lynn Monet, and we've been talking about death, dying, what it's like to have been a nurse that worked with people in their near-end times. We've talked about Lynn's work as a death doula, and Lynn has been sharing some wonderful first-hand accounts of what has happened in her life, and she's the author of a very exciting book. And Lynn, before we get back to the cliffhanger, tell our listeners the name of your book and where they can get it.
So it's called The Colors of Heaven, Beginnings Never End. It's on Amazon. You can also get it on my website. If you get it on my website, I can personalize it for you and sign it. And I think it might even be cheaper on my website. So, however, if you do live out of the country, please order it through Amazon because the shipping is ridiculous otherwise. And I believe that you can get the shipping sometimes for free through Amazon. So outside of the USA, please order it from Amazon unless you want to pay the extra money and have me sign it. But just fair warning.
I think that your signature would be well worth it.
Oh, well, thank you.
Lynn, please continue with that cliffhanger that we had to take before we went to the break.
Okay, well, as I had mentioned, I had volunteered to work a day shift for a friend of mine, so it wasn't my usual routine, but all of the patients had come back and they'd gone, it was lunchtime, they had all come back from lunchtime, they were now settling in their rooms, and I was pushing down the treatment cart to go start my treatments, and I passed Abigail's room on my left-hand side, and she was sitting in a recliner next to a picture window, kind of like those with an air conditioner underneath, kind of like the hotels have in the United States. And she's leaning forward with this piece of yellow butterscotch wrapped candy. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm walking past and I see this woman and this little girl standing in front of her. And she was leaning forward, offering the candy to the little girl. And I thought to myself, oh, well, how nice. Abigail's got some visitors today. She doesn't have a lot of people that come through. And then I took about 3 steps forward and it hit me. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Those people didn't sign in at the nurse's station. And of course, we legally have to have a head count of all the souls in the building just in case there's an emergency and the fire department has to know how many people to get out. So I stepped back and I knocked on her door frame and she invited me in. When I entered the room, she's still sitting there with the candy extended and there was no one there. But I could see, as energy can't be created or destroyed, I could see this waffling to the air right next to me that I knew that the spirits were still there. So Abigail says to me, she says, I'd like you to meet my friends. She says, isn't the little girl beautiful? And I said, yes, she is. And Abigail's eyes got big. She comes forward in her chair and she says, can you see them? And I said, yes. And she said, don't tell anybody. They'll think you're crazy and put you on medication.
Oh,
so
my
here
goodness.
this woman, yeah. So here this woman was on all of this medication now to make her stop seeing things. And she still was seeing things because they weren't hallucinations, they were real, and she had the wherewithal to know about it, to know the difference. So she was one of them that I had this, that secret with, that she knew I could see them and she could see them too. So that was something that was very, very interesting to me.
But Lynn,
also.
Lynn, I'm sorry for cutting you off, but why would the medical doctors want to suppress her? She wasn't hurting anyone. They don't, like there are people who walk the streets who talk to themselves. And I wonder if they're actually talking to themselves or is there someone there that we cannot see?
Well, I can tell you this. I did do a rotation. I went back to further my degree later in life, and I had to do a rotation through the psychiatric wards for my psych class. And walking through that facility, I mean, there are so many people in there that are diagnosed with schizophrenia and things like that, that are empaths. They are actually hearing angels and things speaking to them. I had for instance, that is kind of going off kilter of this beautiful story about things that I actually saw a girl that had attachments on her and that was leaving claw marks on her for that matter. And the medical facility claimed that she was self-inflicting those, and she wasn't, yeah. So, I mean, a lot of people in those mental facilities aren't mental, you know what I'm saying? They are actually gifted and they are seeing things that people can't see. They're vibrating at a higher frequency than other people, and they're able to see the things that are paralleling us in the lifetime and the loved ones that come through because they're of a higher dimension.
Lynn, because you are so empathic, what is it like for you or any other member of the medical community that deals like you do with people at the end of their time when it comes to a child?
Oh, wow. I have not had to deal with the child because I was doing geriatrics and that type of end of life care. I cannot imagine. I know that for instance, my younger sister was murdered and passed away, and I remember seeing her with that as well. But the children, from what I understand and what I've been told by other people that do take care of children, is they talk about the Rainbow Bridge. They also talk about, seeing people come in as well. And even though they're upset during some of the transition, a peace comes over them finally, where they're letting their parents know that they're going to be okay and that they're going to see them again as well. So, and again, you're going to see them again. This is not the last time. It's kind of like they're going on a long vacation and you're going to catch up with them later on, or they move out of the country, and if you have the ability to sit quietly and listen, you might be able to communicate with them through telepathy, and you'll know that they're not really gone. So I hope that brings some comfort. to people.
How do you think that the new advances in science, especially in quantum physics and quantum mechanics, will be do you think that these sciences will be used to help better understand the end times?
I hope so. I hope so. And I'm glad that they're becoming more popular. I mean, there used to be more of this small group, and then they were considered the weirdos. You know what I'm saying? But now they're expanding, and more people are becoming aware of it. And I think some of these new younger doctors that are coming in are a little bit more open to it than the hardcore staunch doctors, that have been in practice for many, many years and are older, because they're still of that frame of mind that,
Yes.
those things are oogie boogies, those things aren't real. And, I find myself even talking to a person that has been diagnosed with terminal illness, or they're in that transition state. When you start talking about things that have to do with death and dying and those sorts of things, they're actually interested in talking about it. Most people are like, oh, well, don't talk about your death, aunt so and so, you're going to be fine. But really, they do want to talk about it. So, and they like sharing some of the beautiful things, and some of the things, as I had mentioned, when they're in that state of transition, because they can hear the telepathy with the filters effacing of the people that have crossed over, and they can also hear the human speaking. There's a lot of times that if Uncle Bob, say for instance, is in the room, you can ask him where the clock is, and the transitioning patient can answer for you, because she can hear the telepathy and she can speak in physical terms. So, and people miss out on that. So, a lot of times that you can have that communication with them as well. There's so many things that people miss because of their fear. They've been taught to be afraid. Children, when they're born and they come in, they're not afraid. They talk about seeing things too, usually up until 5 years old. And
Yes.
it's the conditioning that they receive, and the nurturing that they receive in their families that puts that light out. So, and all of that reopens on the flip side. So they learn to be afraid. And I think that that's kind of where the medical field comes from too. Plus, having to do things a different way for the medical field too. Like, for instance, I'm sure that there's been a treatment for cancer for many, many years, but they don't want people to be healthy because they make more money if they're sick. So, even that with the spectrum of the dying end, if they can give them a pill and treat it, that makes Big Pharma happier.
It also makes the hospital administrator happier, because the longer that the patient is in the hospital, the more money the hospital is making.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a horrible way to look at it, but that's the fact. Lynn, I've got about 2.5 minutes left before I must say so long for tonight. As always, thank you so much for joining us. Please come back soon. But what are your final thoughts in the next 60 to 90 seconds that you would like to share with the X-Zone Nation?
If your children come forward saying that they're seeing something, believe them. Please don't tell them that they're not real, and that just because you don't see it doesn't mean that it's not there. So so ask them, so what are you seeing? And engage with them a little bit, and try not to show your discomfort with it, because then they'll grow up unafraid, and then on the flip side, death won't be so scary for them. Death is not scary for me. I know where I'm going. I've seen where everybody else goes. And it's not about religion, people. I've seen Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, Jewish people, Baptists, and I'm telling you, the same thing happens. The loved ones come in to collect them. So it's not a religious thing, and we're going to cross over and you're not.
I have a friend in Montreal. His name is Gus Ackerman, and he once told me, he said, Rob, we're not here for a long time. We're here for a good time. And I've always remembered that. But just talking about children, and not making fun of them about if they're seeing something, or get angry with them if they say that they see grandma, that they see, or if they have an invisible friend. Don't take a negative attitude towards them, because after all, you as a parent also are guilty of this, because you teach them about a cow that jumps over a moon, a lady that lives in a pumpkin. Let me see, you've got a rabbit that hides eggs and everything at Easter. You've got leprechauns, and you've got Santa Claus. So why should we be so negative with our children or anyone? at that time. Lynn, thank you so much for joining us. A pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to the next time you're back here with us in the X Zone.
Oh, I thank you so much for having me. It's been my pleasure.
X Zone Nation, what a powerful discussion we've had with Lynn Monet. Her insights as a death doula and nurse offer us a deeper understanding of life, death, and everything in between. Now, I hope that you found her perspectives as enlightening as I did. And remember, for more information about her work and access to her resources, her book, and much more, visit www.lynnmonet.com. I'll be back on the other side of the short break as hour number 2 of the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, starts right now. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Red roses too, I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds